Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Tonight, covering all things pro wrestling. As always, live from No South Studios, I'm the Ace of Tavern, Acefield Retro, and joined in 2024 by the one bad Chad himself. What's going on, man?
Happy New Year, everybody. Jan 1 here, year 2 of Wrestling Tonight, and we're wrapping up 2023 with all of our awards. Welcome to the Tournies. Hopefully this becomes a thing year in, year out, every year on Wrestling Tonight. We're going to break down. We cover every promotion here from the top of the top to the low of the low in the realm of pro wrestling. And I think the Tournies, the awards we're about to give out, I think we showcase that in our awards. I'm excited to go over our awards, the Tournies, baby. It's here.
I love the fact that we're putting a bow on the year in this way to have all the accolades and talk about the year that was 2023 and get ready for 2024. And this is the first ever episode of the Tournies, and it's a different approach to these episodes. Of course, you guys are used to listening to us talk about the news, talk about all the stuff going on in pro wrestling, and we will be returning to that next week on January 8th to give you all the news in wrestling and break down really what happened at Wrestle Kingdom and all the stuff that happened at World's End, all the great stuff that will unfold throughout the first month of the year. But today we'll be talking only about 2023 and the year that was. And we have a lot of great categories for you. We got a lot of insight from the Pod Foundation, other wrestling podcasts out there, polling some others. And, we tried to avoid the recency bias. We tried to avoid putting our blinders on and having conversations just in the last 3 months. We want to move the clock backwards and rewatch things. And Chad, I've done my homework, man. I've been definitely preparing for this episode for quite some time and doing the research and having conversations. It's been refreshing, and it reminded me 2023 is going to be a year that's remembered for a very long time.
Hell of a year, man. Across several promotions, I feel like a lot of promotions really flourished. And I think I'm going to take a page out of you and Matt from Extra Cooler's book in 2024. I think I'm going to create a little document, and I'm going to have all of our categories, and I'm going to track it the entire year. I think that's the smart way to do it. I think you were already kind of doing that and really putting the effort in there. I had things floating in my brain of definite winners in each category. So I'm excited. We have our Wrestling Tonight Tournies consensus pick that me and Ace came together to create. But we also had a bunch of people write in with their picks, and we're going to kind of showcase what the consensus of all of our friends in the Tavern universe, what they were thinking.
So yeah, appreciate all the Pod Foundation brethren that sent in their picks to talk about all the stuff that happened out there, and also those outside the Pod Foundation. So there was an inundation of, I think it was close to 14 ballots, which was awesome to see that people flooded them in, and a lot of the same picks, but some of the outside picks were very interesting to talk about. It had me thinking about, let me look back into the catalog of that person to see if maybe they are the heel of the year, the baby face of the year, the wrestler of the year. And, a lot of the conversations here at the Tournies are going to circle around some of the other categories that you may not be hearing on a year-end show. A lot of people are going to be talking about match of the year, of course. They're going to be talking about maybe feud of the year. But we're taking an approach that we wanted to make these categories unique, make them memorable, and incite conversation, because I know that everyone's not going to agree with everything we say. That is the nature of professional wrestling. But this is, first and foremost, fun. And, the year-end stuff, my first entry into podcasting was covering 2021 in full and talking about the year that was. And this is more streamlined, more conversational, have a lot more prep in front of me, obviously with about 3 years of wrestling podcasting in front of me, and really looking forward to the conversation and seeing what you thought about things as well. Because we know what the consensus pick was, but we really didn't break down all of our reasoning. You and I had to come together in a room and come to it. It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I mean, you and I have very like-minded wrestling fandom. Where there were some heated conversations about a couple of the choices, but for the most part, you and I were on the same page, which I guess makes sense.
Yeah, I was surprised too. Like when I saw some of your choices and you saw some of mine, I was expecting maybe a little bit more differences, but we were pretty aligned. We had to debate a couple and talk about a couple, but we came to a Wrestling Tonight consensus, and I think we have some fun ones, man.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into the first one right here, and it's one that is probably you're not going to hear anywhere else. It's the best maneuver of the year. So with that in mind, obviously there is a lot of conversation about finishing maneuvers, and it didn't have to be finishing maneuvers because that was something that you and I had to clarify with each other. It had to be a move that had the most impact throughout the year. And looking at the lens of 2023, finishing moves that have sort of, lives in lore. This person, Will Ospreay, the Hidden Blade, was the finish of a lot of great matches, some of the best matches we saw throughout 2023. And what a finish it is, man. It can be hit in all different directions. It's so impactful. It's everything I love about a finishing move. And I don't think it gets the love it deserves because really it's one of those moves that is quickly becoming my favorite in all of wrestling.
Yeah, I think when I think of best maneuver, obviously you always hear wrestlers talk about a good finisher. I know our maneuver of the year didn't have to be a finisher, but since this is a finisher, a lot of wrestlers say a good finisher can be hit from anywhere on anyone, and this hits kind of that prerequisite. But the thing for me about the Hidden Blade, besides the point that it's attached to a wrestler who had so many great matches this year, this move for me, there's no flash. There's no all the opponent has to kind of help them get this move off. This is a devastating move. The devastation of the Hidden Blade. It looks deadly. It doesn't look choreographed. It's one of those moves when you see him hit it, you're like, he just messed that dude up. Like it feels like it hurts. It looks deadly. Me and Sneed always talk about Killer Cross, Karrion Kross in WWE, that finisher he has, which is kind of a similar gimmick to the Hidden Blade, and how weak sauce it looked, and how it's such kind of a cheap finish for someone like Karrion Kross. This is how that move should be done. Ospreay makes this look like the most deadly finisher in the game. If we're talking 2021, the One-Winged Angel kind of dominated. And it's a move that most of the time when you hit these maneuver of the year type of moves, your opponent's not kicking out. They protect the finish. Hidden Blade's a very protected finish. And yeah, I had Hidden Blade by a mile. Honestly, there was no other maneuvers or finishers that really rose to the top for me. It was Hidden Blade all the way.
And this was signed, sealed, delivered for me with the picture of Shota Umino when he hit it on him, and Shota Umino's face is blown out where his cheeks are popped out, his eyes are squeezed shut. But the Hidden Blade, as you mentioned before, it's so versatile, and I think that's so important for a professional wrestler. And looking at the best finishes in all of pro wrestling in the history, obviously Stone Cold Stunner being probably at the number one of everybody's list. Where would Stone Cold be without that finish? If you take away the Stone Cold Stunner, I'm not saying it's impossible that he doesn't reach the heights where he gets, but I don't know if he does, because the Stunner is so synonymous with who the character is. And I think over time, the Hidden Blade is becoming that for Will Ospreay. And I think as we continue to see him grow across a national audience with this deal with AEW throughout 2024 and watching him finish up his New Japan Pro Wrestling dates, everyone's going to become a lot more familiar with the Hidden Blade, and a lot of people are going to be taking that move, and it's going to be pretty much the finish for a lot of W's on Will Ospreay's side. So I'm looking forward to see a lot more Hidden Blades in 2024. But in 2023, he had a guy. I wish I would have went back and counted all of them because there were a lot.
Oh yeah, and like you said, the Stone Cold Stunner is probably one of the top ones of all time. My mind also goes to RKO. That's so synonymous with Randy Orton. Even to go back old school, and see the thread between Hidden Blade. The first finisher I remember as a kid being like, if this dude hits that on anyone, you are dead. And that's Jake the Snake's DDT. Now that move seems so pedestrian. Maybe 20 years from now, we'll look at a Hidden Blade and it'll just be part of the repertoire of wrestling. But it's funny to see how finishers kind of evolve.
Yeah.
But the DDT at one point was the deadliest move in the game. But right now, the deadliest move in the game for me is the Hidden Blade.
I mean, the super kick was the finish for WrestleMania 12, one of the biggest matches of the year. And the super kick is a transition move now. And Canadian Destroyer, same thing. That when Petey Williams first broke that out, or Amazing Red first broke that out, we're like, what is this move? And now it's just, I mean, you got Scott D'Amore doing it. So it's like,
yeah,
it is one of those
exactly.
moves, and wrestling evolves. But the hidden blade, to me, my finishes for me need to be snug, they need to be stiff, and they need to be effective. And those check all those boxes for me. And it was a unanimous decision. There was no discussion on both of our parts because of the year it was for what Ospreay put on his resume after this year. I mean, the finishing move was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all about snug and stiff at the Tavern, and this move that's the definition of this move.
With that being said, let's get to our second category here, which was the best event of the year. And this was a harder discussion than I really gave it credit for. And as I was going through the catalog, I got to do a lot of watching of wrestling. And if you're watching on video, you could see the answer here. But we went with a consensus pick of Forbidden Door 2023. And in totality, the second edition of Forbidden Door was definitely considered a huge success when this aired. And the crowd was hot. The matches were absolutely intense. And really, I mean, we had some outcomes that were surprising. And, to me, talking about Will Ospreay, match of the night probably was Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega 2. Those dudes took each other to the limit, and they had a completely different match, which was challenging than their Wrestle Kingdom match, which a lot of the people that talk about that first match setting the bar so high in 2023 was at Wrestle Kingdom. But a lot of people don't really talk about the other aspect of the Ospreay Omega match at Forbidden Door was they took a different playbook and went a completely different route and still blew the roof off. So,
yep.
Let you give your thoughts on Forbidden Door a bit, but to me, it's highlighted and cataloged by the Ospreay Omega match.
Yeah, and that's a difficult task to come into an event like this in a rematch situation of a match that was going into the Forbidden Door event, their marquee match of Ospreay and Omega. It was living in the shadow of arguably the match of the year, and they delivered. I mean, we also got Danielson Okada on this, which was a dream match. Now Danielson got hurt, but still yet the match was pretty fucking good. You had Sting and Darby Allin with Naito, which was fun just to see them going against Chris Jericho, Sammy, and Suzuki. The Elite and Eddie Kingston and Ishii going against Blackpool Combat Club and Takeshita and Shota Umino. And here's the thing, I like New Japan, but I'm not what you would call a New Japan guy. I'm not up on every single week to week thing. And even I sit back and I'm blown away by these events. The first one delivered. This one, I think, trumped the first year. I mean, the show was kicked off with MJF and Tanahashi. It was kind of storyline. MJF was contractually obligated because he was always burying New Japan around this time. And even to see CM Punk kind of have that match against Kojima was a fun time. There was a lot of star power here. I enjoyed it, man. I really, really enjoyed this. Even Sonata and Jungle Boy was fun.
Yeah, it was definitely tough for them to top 2022's edition of Forbidden Door, but they did it in spades. And, I know it's easy for people to look at okay, it was anchored by Ospreay Omega. That was the best match. And pretty much everything else was, built around it, but not really the case, man. As you mentioned before, some of these other matches, Danielson and Okada, despite Danielson getting hurt, I know you mentioned that before, the match still delivered. I mean, you also had some other great action. I mean, the Orange Cassidy, Daniel Garcia, Shibata, Zack Sabre Jr. match for the All Atlantic Championship at the time was fantastic. You mentioned MJF and Tanahashi, and I know, we talk about here and if you go back to our episode when we covered Forbidden Door, I was talking about Tanahashi losing a little bit of a step, and it would have been, even better to see him here on this big stage, maybe a couple years back, but he's a big match player. He showed out there and had one of the best matches we've seen, even all these other matches we see in that Naito showed out in the G1 tournament this year, when he seems like he's lost a step. This is the match people circle. He became a t-shirt wrestler. He's not the guy anymore. And then we saw Naito turn it up to 11 in that match against Will Ospreay in the G1. But this card itself was well structured. It was the perfect example of how to do business with another promotion. And the progressive mindset seems to be bleeding into the mindsets of other promotions, including WWE down the line. And I'm not saying they're going to be doing a Forbidden Door J show with TNA or otherwise, but I think this puts the blueprint out there that it's possible to do a collaborative show without the headaches that go into the booking problems. The relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW continue to be prosperous, and I'm looking forward to Forbidden Door 2024, but it's going to be damn hard to top 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing with this award. It's a difficult award to give out because it really, it's how you look at what makes an event special to you. Because obviously you've got WrestleMania, marquee, big event. It's a 2-nighter. You've also got All In this year, which was a big moment for AEW. All of these events, even Elimination Chamber with Sammy and Roman, like there's a lot of big monumental events this year. But for me, kind of what some would call the weakness of Forbidden Door, where it's kind of a bunch of one-offs. There's not, you have two promotions coming together, so it's not like every match is story payoff that we've been watching on our weekly TV. I think that's the strength of the show, though, where they can really just book for sheer entertainment. And these matches always, like, I've never been disappointed by a Forbidden Door. If you're a work rate guy or a dream match guy, these are the events that kind of I get up for in a lot of ways. So it was tough because there were a lot of good events, but that, I know you said kind of in a negative way that fans would look at this event and say, well, it was just anchored by Omega Ospreay too. But yeah, it was anchored by Omega Ospreay too. Like that's a big selling point to me. So that's kind of what tipped it over the edge, was the Danielson Okada and the Ospreay Omega. I mean, that it was just two huge dream matches, one a rematch and one, Danielson Okada. Who doesn't love that?
What tipped it over the edge for me as well was the spirit of what it's about. I love seeing two promotions working together and then delivering in the biggest way possible. And looking at the other events, in the calendar year, giving some of our listener choices that we have in here, AEW All In definitely was a consensus pick. Multiple people picked that. AEW Revolution 2023. Of course, you mentioned WrestleMania 39, and Backlash was out there with two picks for Backlash from listeners. I kind of agree with that. I wouldn't say Backlash would be up there for me, but you can make the case for WrestleMania 39, big match feel. All In, of course, for historic sake, but I still think the Forbidden Door card from top to bottom tops every single other card that happened this year. And just the energy of the crowd. You got to give the crowd credit there. They helped bring this event to the next level. They're just as important as the matches that are happening in front of them.
Absolutely.
So let's get to the next category here, which is commentary team of the year. And the commentary stuff is so important to what is happening in the ring. And I think a lot of people don't recognize the importance of the commentary team until they hear a bad one, until you listen to a team that leaves you looking at and maybe muting the TV. But want to give some love, especially to a promotion that is very understated. And they're maybe not going to be understated for long here with the move to TNA, but it's Matthew Raywald, Tom Hannafin over in Impact. They provided a soundtrack that was just amazing. And you also got to talk about the fact that they are taping in bulk. They have to have the understanding and the wherewithal of where things need to be plugged, what storylines need to be advanced while taping 4 weeks of TV, being able to pivot, and the chemistry between these two guys. They developed a rapport that remains like no other. I mean, I'm looking at, even the main promotions, AEW, WWE, even go through your GCWs. No one topped the Impact Wrestling team with Hannafin and Raywald this year.
No, I'm with you, because and the tipping point to me for them to win this was the fact that they do the bulk tapings, the fact that they can keep the energy and tell these stories like it's happening in the here and now. That's a big thing for me. They're kind of working at a deficit in that regard. When it's live week to week, you just naturally are in the moment. I think AEW, I'm a big fan of all of their commentary teams. The runner up for me this year that I almost suggested was Collision's team. I'm a big fan of Kevin Kelly and Nigel McGuinness. The only thing that paused me is they didn't have a full year. And there was a little bit of Ian Riccaboni came in when Kevin Kelly was away at New Japan. So they didn't have their core team for a long time. But, you know, with Excalibur and Tony and Taz, I'm a big fan of those guys. I think we've gotten accustomed to them and maybe we're taking them for granted, but Hannafin and Raywalt really jumped out at me this year that they're quietly over on Access TV putting on bangers and telling great stories because, you know, you've heard Jim Ross say it, commentary is the lyrics to the music of pro wrestling. And I think these guys I hope they keep them together because for a long time, TNA had a problem of kind of a revolving door of commentary people. You know, they had D'Lo in there for a minute. Don Callis was in there before joining AEW. Like they had kind of a revolving door and they would never stick to a team. And I think kind of the strength of a team is to let them grow together and get that chemistry. That's why it's so shocking to me that these guys just have natural chemistry right out of the gate. I'm a big fan of this team.
So I also think as they approach the reemergence of, in just a few short days, TNA and the rebrand here, they have a chance to kind of take hold of a seat that's been held for a very long time between Don West and Mike Tenay as being the voice of TNA wrestling. And these guys are the best people to follow suit because, as you mentioned before, being able to put the lyrics to the music, Raywald and Hannafin have such a great dynamic and rapport together, and they both function doing their jobs so well, but not stepping on each other. And I think the one thing for me, and I love the AEW team, I love Excalibur and AEW's team with Tony Schiavone, the historic stuff of hearing his voice, the voice of your childhood. But the one takeaway for me watching the AEW broadcast in comparison to the TNA Impact one, and you know what? There's 3 guys, so it's challenging sometimes.
Right.
But they do step on each other a lot. You hear a lot of "I'm sorry's, I didn't mean to." You'll never hear that with Hannafin and Raywald. They know exactly where they're supposed to be. They can have their eyes closed and continue to run the play. You know, someone's playing point guard, someone's taking the shots, and I think, you know, with the color and with play-by-play, that's so important to have your role and not dip your toe into both sides and know when it's time to tell a story, know when it's time to do a plug and not inundate yourself. Like the extreme of the inundation, I understand the machines behind them, but the Michael Cole amount of plugging is when it's too much and it becomes like bogged down with advertisements. But it's just as essential to make sure you're advertising the upcoming events, buying tickets, you know, shilling everything going on the website. This is the perfect mix of storytelling. And then you get the added bonus, as you mentioned before, having the wherewithal and the understanding to pivot about where they're at. You know, at the point when they're filming, it's August, but they're filming for the first week in October, knowing that Bound for Glory is coming up. It's very, very impressive to watch them do what they were doing.
Yeah, a 2-man team is always kind of the way to go. And a lot of promotions are pulled into that 3-man team. I know we're giving all superlatives, but we haven't even mentioned WWE's commentary team. Not high on my radar, man. What's your thoughts of the current state of WWE commentary?
Well, yeah, I agree with that as well. And I mentioned before the Michael Cole piece, but I feel as if it is infomercial style commentary with the purpose to sell, obviously. And I think that's everyone's job, is to sell and get you in the door. But we saw, and I think we saw a little bit of Michael Cole's personality coming at him throughout this year and at the end of 2022 as well, where whether it's nostalgia, people grew up with him because he's been around for so long. And his personality did shine through, where, you know, you see that video of Sammy and KO beating the Usos at WrestleMania with like the cell phone camera or whatever camera is right by his side, where he's losing his mind. You can't fault the dude. He has passion for the business. But for me, it's not my style. I've never been a huge Michael Cole guy. For me, I don't think he tells the same stories. But he's the elder statesman at this point. He is the standard that they're holding themselves by, and he does that job for what they're looking for better than anyone in the history, because
I agree.
The WWE machine wants a propaganda, someone that's going to give it to you on a platter, and he's their guy. And there's a reason why he's been there for the longest time. For me, though, it rings hollow. There's, you know, even though his passion shines through, he loves the company, it doesn't resonate as a wrestling fan. I want to hear the raw, gritty storytelling that, you know, Matthew Raywald and Tom Hannafin can continue to give me. But I'm talking about the Jim Rosses and the Jerry Lawlers from back in the day.
Same. I mean, it just sell, and sell some more. Tell us about how many hits we got on social media. that stuff kind of buries what I think commentary is there to do, and it's tell the story in the ring. They don't
And
do
I mean,
that
that's
as
also
much.
too. I mean, even like the NXT team, like with Booker T out there, I'm not a fan of the commentary team there. And that's, when you look at the egregious side of when commentary is not good, when I'm watching that show, it's distracting sometimes with the catchphrases. And sometimes, as we mentioned, they try to, air it as charming of overstepping because he's just very excited, but it can become distracting and take away from the match in the ring. And I never for a second feel like Ray and Hannafin do that. They're always complimentary of the guys in the ring, making sure even if there's a wrestler that isn't as well known, giving the background. No one's better than Excalibur doing that. If we want to give flowers, Excalibur does the best of making sure the history of maneuver, similar to how Mike Tenay used to do it in WCW and give you guys the understanding of Lucha Libre or the international superstars from Japan. I love that flavor, but to me as a package though, like we're speaking of a commentary team, not just a one-off, because I wouldn't say either one of these guys ironically would be my announcer of the year if I had to pick one.
No.
But as a team, they work the best together.
Yeah, it's the tandem. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think going back to the question about the WWE thing, I think it's for people. I think some people like that, but I mean, if you gave Michael Cole the opportunity, similar to a lot of independent wrestlers, if he got the opportunity to maybe call a show on IWTV or have the freedom to call a show on a TNA Impact show, he might have a blast and be able to show a different side of him and make a lot of fans out of people that don't like his style.
It's true. It's very true.
But let's get to the ring announcer of the year. So looking at ring announcer of the year, and this was, I mean, there were some great choices, and ring announcing seems to be in some sort of renaissance right now because there's a lot of great ring announcers with unique styles.
Yep.
And speaking from being on the independents and starting my journey through ring announcing with Remarkable Wrestling and recently Rad Pro Wrestling, you can kind of go into two different boxes, the traditional route, or you can find a way to, be different. And, looking at, some of the different voices on the independent scene, you got Righteous Jesse, who does more of a hardcore screaming style. You also got, Bobby Banks, who is a kind of a Southern draw type of style. And he feels like an old school Southern announcer, but also has like the hardcore wrestling piece, or the more traditional route where you're looking at the David Adams of House of Glory. Those are, it sets the soundtrack for the show. And it is a very difficult job, speaking from experience. And I give so much credit to everyone that does it at the highest stage, at the lowest stage, doesn't matter. But giving the flowers to the guy, our dude here, MLJ, continues to absolutely be the benchmark of what it means to be a ring announcer, the utmost professional. Many people tried to duplicate, but they'll never replicate what this dude's able to do. He's one of a kind. He's the voice of GCW wrestling. And to me, he brings his own style to ring announcing, and he sets the style for what people are trying to do, but they don't do it as well as him.
And he is all his own, like he is a complete original. He's not, I love that he's kind of bucked back at, wearing the suits, not hating on the people that wear suits. That is a tradition. But the fact that he just comes out rocking his vintage wrestling tee, he's not trying to impress anybody. It's so on brand for the promotion he is the voice of. And I think he's very unassuming in the way that people look at him. He's got his Carhartt beanie on. He's in the ring. People think I think they undersell this guy's knowledge. When it comes to GCW, he knows the ins and outs of everyone that comes in that company. And I mean, when he does the Nick Gage intro, there's nothing better in pro wrestling than that Nick Gage intro when he runs down the whole thing. I mean, big fan of Emil J. I think if he doesn't want it, I don't think, but if to me, he could be a superstar announcer in any major promotion, but he's rooted in the underground, and that's why I respect the guy so much. I love Emil J. There's nobody like him. And, shout out to the Samantha Irvins and the Justin Roberts and all of the big names in the big promotions. That's all well and good, but you got to shine a light on someone who I think is probably doing it more. He's bringing a more original flavor than any of the people we just named.
Yeah, and GCW took a huge step in 2023 across their promotion, traveling internationally and really making new fans across different countries. And they've really bridged the gap to get some of the casuals in. And MLJ is part of that reason. I mean, he's there as the soundtrack. And if you watch his approach to how he does this, and like you mentioned before, the style he brings to it, wearing the print all over shirts, whether it be SummerSlam 1992 or an ECW shirt, he is going there with the utmost professionalism and has, I mean, the utmost knowledge. Like the dude's going out there with no cards, no, like he doesn't have it straight off the dome. And
Right.
having, again, being a ring announcer, just the information you have to remember and the pressure being in front of a ravenous crowd and an unforgiving crowd that's GCW, they love him. They embrace him. It's because he is one of them. He's a
Right.
fan of wrestling. He's a great follow on X. If you guys follow him, he loves wrestling at large. And to me, I think, as you said before, I think if he ever had, the desire to do it, I think they would I think a big promotion would take him as the package he is. It's similar to how Joey Styles eventually was the voice of Raw for a little bit.
Right.
It may not always work. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but to me, he stands head and shoulders above the rest because there's no one else that has ever done it like him. And,
No.
the Justin Roberts has obviously the Howard Finkel's to thank for his style, and he does it in his own way too. I love Justin Roberts, but MLJ marches to the beat of his own drum in the best way possible. And, he is my ring announcer of the year by a lot. So,
Yeah,
and that speaks
by
a
a
lot
lot.
because you mentioned Samantha Irvin, Lexi Nair, we also have the Justin Roberts of the world, and even, go down the list of the other announcers. And, I think Dave Penzer also had a really good year in 2023, but for me, soundtrack and big match feel, like you mentioned, the Nick Gage entrance is synonymous, but Maki Ito gets, some love there. And even when he does Jordan Oliver and Nick Wayne's entrance in GCW and puts on the Andrade entrance he just did for Andrade's debut, putting some of the flair on that, man, it gives you chills, and that's what it's about. Big
And he
match feel.
like you said, he feels like one of us when he's out there. When the wrestlers are coming to the ring, he's vibing to the music. He's got his own thing. And Samantha Irvin, she's been killing it. She's gotten a lot of love because all of the social media clips of her sitting there and then going into these. She takes a unique approach on each talent she announces. But Emil J, man, he ran away with this for me. I don't think there's a close second.
I agree with that. The only other choices we had a couple, like you mentioned, Samantha Irvin was definitely in the choices. Justin Roberts got a lot of love from all the different selections that came in from listeners. But for me, you and I were consensus for MLJ. I think he was someone that, to me stood head and shoulders above because he is unique in a world that sometimes it's hard to be unique, and he does it really, really well.
Yep.
All right, going to best non-wrestler. Best non-wrestler is definitely someone who's not active. And this was a very tough competition because there was a few faces in here that definitely rang true as far as being essential storytelling mechanisms. And even though they're not active, they are very much a pivotal point. And you and I consensus went with Don Callis. And this continues to be a huge story on the AEW side. He is, whatever he touches is absolute gold. And anytime he's on your screen, it's must-see TV. And there was a time this year where we had a debate question of who's getting more heat, Dominic Mysterio or Don Callis, and it was neck and neck for a bit. And of course, with Don Callis, maybe it's the Continental Classic, maybe it's putting emphasis on the Devil storyline. The Callis family stuff has taken a backseat, but he's still accruing and he's building his militia, and I think Don Callis will be at the forefront. But Don Callis, to me, is what it means to be a great advocate for whoever you're managing. He continues to be a great, where does the line stand as far as what's real and what's not with the guy? Like, he blurs the line in a world where it's hard to blur that line and where kayfabe doesn't exist. When's he in character? When is he not? And to me, he highlights the best features of whoever he's at by their side. And even when he gets active, punching people, we saw that recently on Rampage, or when he's taken a beating himself. I mean, when he got that huge scar on his face where he's putting lipstick on it to emphasize it, gushing blood. I love Don Callis, and he's my non-wrestler of the year, and yours as well.
Yeah. Look, I'm a Paul Heyman guy. Love Paul Heyman. People could argue for Paul Heyman. Like he could be up there. My only thing with Paul Heyman, he seems like he's been absorbed into this bloodline story where when they use him and let him do his thing, Paul Heyman crushes it, knocks it out of the park every time. Bloodline doesn't need Heyman. Heyman adds to it. He's a nice garnish on the steak. But Callis is there to elevate other guys. When you put a guy with Callis to elevate them. Takeshita can't speak English, young up and coming Japanese talent. You throw him with Callis, he instantly elevates. And like you said, anytime Callis is on my screen, I'm entertained. Like he is one of the most entertaining personalities in All Elite Wrestling for me. I think he elevates everything he touches. He's hilarious. He makes me laugh. He's a son of a bitch. The entire package they put together, the entrance music that's just the drone, everything about him has such a tinge of heel comedy gold that instantly he could literally just be walking down to the ring with that smug look and he already has me laughing. Like anytime he comes out, I'm just happy to see him because I'm so entertained by Callis. I love Don Callis.
Yeah, and I think people need to really look at his legacy in wrestling and how many decades he's enveloped in, and looking at through, involved in WWF 1998, out there doing his thing. And he's been essential throughout the history of wrestling. He's almost like the Forrest Gump. You find him in a different painting somewhere else where he was there.
Yeah.
And looking at some of the other listener choices out here, a lot of Don Callis was thrown in here. Paul Heyman, of course, but want to shine some light on Prince Nana. He was given a lot of love.
He was close.
So the second half of Prince Nana's year, maybe if he was as hot as he was for the whole year, but Prince Nana single-handedly saved the embassy angle. And then, I wouldn't say he's equal parts of Swerve's momentum, but his combination with Swerve and the viral nature of the Prince Nana dance and the theme music, that package, if you remove Prince Nana from that setting, who knows? I mean, everything works right now for Swerve. Prince Nana deserves the credit for being a part of that.
Yeah, Nana is a big part of that. The only thing that makes Callis jump above him, when I think of Nana, I think of him with Swerve as far as the dance, the whole package. With Callis, I don't see Nana getting on the mic and cutting promos like Callis. Callis could literally be in the top 5 stickmen in the business. Like when he is on the mic, he's crushing it. So it's like, that's what elevates Callis, and that's what elevates Heyman to me. Heyman is Heyman because he can cut promos. Callis is from that same school. It's the Bobby Heenan school, man. Heenan begot Heyman, Heyman begot Callis. It's that lineage of heel managers.
So, looking at Heyman, you mentioned, I think historically I would put Heyman above Don Callis, but we're looking at just through the lens of 2023. And you mentioned being wrapped up in this bloodline stuff. And when the highs were high for Paul Heyman, they were very high. But when the lows were low with the bloodline, when there was lulls where Roman Reigns was gone for a bit, there wasn't the same. There was almost the same rhetoric happening every single week where Paul Heyman wasn't firing on all cylinders. Not his fault. I think creatively they were putting everything on ice with the bloodline, awaiting for the next step for the story. Don Callis had hit after hit. Every promo is on our screen. And for a bit there, even on the Call to Hawk segments during the flagship, I think Hawk was just waiting for the Don Callis segment. Am I right?
Yeah. With Heyman, there was a bit of coasting with him where they weren't focused on him. And that's what kind of made him fall off to me. I will say, as I'm putting over both Heyman and Callis as being great promo guys, one thing that Heyman does better than Callis, that if he was featured a little more and not, on cruise control with the bloodline storyline, sometimes the strength of Heyman is almost his facial expressions.
Yeah.
He can tell a story. They put that camera on him and he's reacting to what Roman's saying, or he's reacting to what Jimmy and Jay are doing. That's the strength of Heyman. And that's something that he has, I think, a little bit over Callous, but I think that's more the character that they're playing and the story that they're involved in, where Heyman is kind of the subservient, scared of his leader, scared of his boss, and he gets to really play with that from his facial expressions. Callous is more like the Bobby Heenan school, where he's the brain behind everything. He's smarter than all of you insects in the crowd. Like, and I gravitate more towards that. But Heyman, I mean, the facial expressions, you got to put him over for that.
Yeah, and the yielded results of Don Callis' effect on the roster continues to show where, I mean, look at Kyle Fletcher, for example. You just put the Callis rub on him temporarily with not even the same energy that they put on, that they could put on him. And he immediately feels like a single star. And, obviously it's in part of, he's in matches that feel important. They give him a little bit of an edge. But when Aussie Open was originally in the AW landscape, Kyle Fletcher's have grown leaps and bounds. And I think Don Callis deserves a lot of credit for it. Powerhouse Hobbs, same thing. Powerhouse Hobbs with Don Callis feels like a different world champion caliber wrestler just right there. And I just want to appreciate we're living in this time where the art of the pro wrestling manager has returned. You mentioned the Bobby Heenans, but even like the Jimmy Harts, the energy that is transferred over, they're so important to the landscape of wrestling. And for so long, they disappeared. There's still a place in wrestling for valet. There's still a place in wrestling for, the tag team partner at ringside, but nothing tells a story like a manager at the ringside. And Psychology 101 is Don Callis, what he's doing 2023. It is masterclass in helping tell a story. And he gets heat on top of heat. Him and Dom are neck and neck for who's the biggest heel in wrestling. And that's a legit conversation.
Yeah, and I think a big thing with Callis too, and Heyman as well in the past, it's like, you're an important non-wrestling figure when a company, a promotion has big things in mind for a talent, and they stick that talent with you. And they're sticking them with you because they know that you're going to elevate them even more. That's why you see Will Hobbs and Takeshita, who the company is big on, being saddled with Callis. That's why at one point WWE rolled the dice and put Claudio with Heyman. I mean, it was short-lived, but they were like, hey, maybe Heyman can help this guy get over. Punk went with, Brock Lesnar, their bell cow.
Curtis Axel was with Heyman for a bit too.
Yeah, like if you're wanting to get over, if they're like, hey, put him with this guy, he can help. That's a big feather in your cap as a manager.
The Callis family thing is such a throwback to me, and I love it. And I'm looking forward to the story throughout 2024 because I don't even think we scraped the top of the iceberg when it comes to the story and still getting the members uncovered in that painting. And they're going to be a huge piece to what AEW is doing throughout 2024. And I think once the Continental Classic thing is cleared up and once the Devil storyline sort of fades into what it becomes, Callis is going to be at the forefront again, and well-deserved. And he's a non-wrestling figure that continues to be one of the main focal points of the show. And one of the more interesting, intriguing conversations of all time. Like I just, for his ability to rejuvenate his career over and over again and have a place on the roster and be effective in helping build new stars. Like, what else can you say about the dude?
Absolutely. The Jackal, baby.
So moving on to Rookie of the Year here. And this was a very challenging 2-person race. And really the thing that separated Billy Starks over Nick Wayne to me was Nick Wayne has a lot of experience in GCW, and I feel like he had a lot more reps under him than the Billy Starks. I feel like Billy Starks is, of course, she had a lot of stuff happening on the independents, but she feels like a true blue rookie when it comes to AEW programming. And she had to learn on the fly, and I think she's aced every test in spades. I mean, most notably, this Athena feud was, had the chance to essentially main event a pay-per-view for Ring of Honor, and having the ability to be legitimate there and just come up short, but be a believable contender to Athena, who is having one hell of a year. Billy Starks rocked it. And she, at this point, the sky is the limit as far as the future of women's wrestling, not just AEW and Ring of Honor. She's the future of women's wrestling at large.
Yeah, and she's been doing it since she was in high school. You know, go back in our visits to the Tavern series. We interviewed Billy, I think, when she was 16, and she was crushing it on the independents. Shout out to Truth Magnum and Turbo Floyd from the Outrunners for putting us in contact with Billy Starks. She's the thing that tipped her over Nick Wayne for me is both of them crushed it in GCW. Both of them crushed it on the indies. I mean, Nick Wayne had killer matches in Defy, GCW. I mean, Nick Wayne had a match with Will Ospreay in Rhode Island for GCW that was incredible. But the thing that tipped it for Billy for me is Nick Wayne has a supporting cast around him in AEW that is incredible. Christian Cage, now Adam Copeland's tied up in that story. Even you know, the whole Swerve and Darby angle, like he's surrounded by kind of a safety net. You know, Darby's a longtime friend, making him a little comfortable. Billy was thrown into a main event top tier storyline for Ring of Honor that's happening on a streaming platform, and you're right out of high school, which Nick Wayne is too, but you're right out of high school and they're saying, hey, we're going to put you with the ROH women's champion and we're going to have you guys in a story for over a year. And really in Ring of Honor, on weekly TV and Ring of Honor, they were kind of the premier story. So they were carrying that company, and I think she crushed it, man. And just to reiterate what you said, I truly think she's the future of the division. When I can't even begin to think what Billy Starks at 25, 26 years old is going to look like. She's going to be incredible.
Yeah, and I think also comparing it to Nick Wayne, and I understand they both had a similar path, similar age, and maybe it's just the state of women's wrestling and how it's still lagging behind the men's and the opportunities that men get. I felt like Nick Wayne had opportunities to hone the craft. Maybe it's the family lineage. I feel like he had a little bit more behind him. It's not even just the way he was presented on TV, but a little bit more of a push in the direction of I don't know. He was already there. Billy Starks, to me, felt like she took such a big leap this year to get from where she was to where she is. Just, I mean, maturity wise for the age. I mean, think about when you were 18 years old, fresh out of high school. Would you have the emotional aptitude, the maturity to be working in a place where, I mean, obviously we see the issues that go on in locker rooms, and the ability to have the poise and the confidence and really just to slow yourself down on a big stage. And you can't really like understand how big that moment with Athena was for that match. I mean, the feud extended for months and months, but the match on pay-per-view on a huge stage, and I understand it's a streaming service and it feels like lesser than AEW, but it is still for the women's world championship. She's trusted in that spot by Tony Khan, you know, and she knocked it out of the park. She hit a home run. Then she ran the bases, grabbed the bat again, and hit another one. That's yeah. You know, to me, I mean, the future is just absolutely so bright for her, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity she gets. And I would love to see her on the AEW side of things sooner than later. Her and Athena should take what they're doing on ROH and just bring it to TV, because I think that's one of the best things happening in all of women's wrestling.
I'm with you. I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but Nick Wayne, he was born into this. You know, in a lot of ways. I mean, he is second generation. His dad, Buddy Wayne, ran a wrestling academy.
Right.
So he had kind of a leg in the business. Billy Starks, it just shows, you know, a girl that age, a female wrestler trying to get into the business and running the independents at 15, 16 years old. There's just something, you know, I got to tip my cap to that a little more than Nick Wayne. Although Nick Wayne, I hate this because we're picking between two, and it sounds like we're trying to devalue what Nick Wayne has done, and I'm not. I mean, what he's done is incredible as well. It's just I had to give Billy a little bit of an edge.
Completely agree with that, and I think Nick Wayne is going to do great things, and Billy Stark's going to do great things, and the future of wrestling is in really good hands, not just because of those two, but look at those that are coming up behind them, the Jordan Olivers, the Brian Keiths, the just the list goes on. I'm going to, some shilling the Desmond Coles, the Gabriel
Yeah.
Skies, the Percy Ryans. They're up and coming, and wrestling continues to thrive because of talent at this age. It just, if you went back 20 years ago, would there ever be an 18-year-old as good as Billy Starks or as good as Nick Wayne at that level?
Right.
I'd be hard pressed to find one. They would be considered an anomaly. And right now it seems like they're being trusted with the skill set and deservingly so. It's not like they're putting in a position that they're over their head. They're showing that they're able to handle it. And then some, put more on my plate.
And hats off to Tony Khan, man, for having two young guns like this in two separate divisions, to have a Nick Wayne and a Billy Starks at 18 years old, 18, 19 years old. Hats off, man. You've got the future in your hand.
So let's get to most underrated. And this conversation, to me, you and I were on the same page with this from the beginning. And I feel like once this person, Jacob Fatu, finds himself in WWE, and I feel like it's inevitable, he's going to go from underrated to everyone's favorite wrestler. And what Jacob Fatu was doing under the lights of MLW, quietly in a lot of ways, was absolutely tearing it up in 2023. He absolutely had a great year. And I think if you infuse him with the machine that is the Bloodline storyline, this guy, we could be looking at the guy who's the heir apparent to Roman Reigns. And that's not hyperbole. That's how talented he is.
Not to discredit Solo Sikoa in any way, but if the Samoan werewolf, Jacob Fatu, comes into that bloodline, I'm forgetting about Solo. Jacob Fatu to me has that Eddie Kingston quality where he's terrifyingly real. Like, I believe everything he does. He seems like a dude that is real as it gets. And I think there are a lot of hardcore fans that do rate him high, that respect him, that know what he is. When I thought most underrated, I'm thinking from how high he could go in the business and how little people are recognizing that on a casual sense. Because to me, MLW's got this guy down there and they're sitting on a gold mine. If it wasn't the lack of reach that MLW has in the casual fan base, this guy would be one of the biggest stars in pro wrestling. If he's in AEW, he's a top tier heel. If he's in WWE, he's vying for Roman's spot. This guy is scary good. He's killed it in GCW. MLW, he's reigned at the top of Contra and all of those guys for a long, long time. He was their champion. He's just a scary guy that I believe, and he believes his character. It seems like it's not a put on. Like, he is totally bought in. I think he is the gem. He is the diamond in the rough of pro wrestling. The fact that WWE hasn't tried to scoop him up and bring him into that company yet is mind blowing to me. He's Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa is like the SNL version of Jacob Fatu.
You're right, though. Facts.
He's the WWE. I like Solo, but I feel like the edge there, the mean
Mom, we have Solo we have Jacob Fatu at home. That's what it is.
Right. Like, I feel like Solo's kind of he's playing mean. Jacob Fatu feels like he is mean. The mean streak is real. I love Jacob Fatu. I think he's probably top 3 talent outside of the major promotions. I think he's highly, highly underrated.
Yeah, and we talk about, similar to a lot of these conversations with these tangible, real characters, they blur the line. And where does it stop with Jacob Fatu? When you're watching him in the ring, it's hard to not believe he doesn't hate his opponent or wants to tear the head from the shoulders. And the believability factor is, and I didn't even think about it with Eddie Kingston. It is similar to Eddie Kingston, where you watch the authenticity of the character bleed into the real life person. And I'm just telling, when you said, if you put a machine behind him like WWE to push him to the moon, and just the athleticism and just the raw ability and the poise, he's worked on big stages already. So he is already almost the finished product of where they want Solo to go in like 5, 6, 7 years, ready, willing, and just ready for the audience to see and eat up, because he could work a lot of different styles too. I think that's what other people don't understand, is that He's a guy who can go out there and put on a 5-star classic, or he can go out there and be your machine to squash people. He can definitely work Fed style if he needs to. Man, he is underrated by a lot, and it just speaks to the reach of MLW, or lack of reach, because they're not really out there. But it's a matter of time. Jacob Fatu is going to be on our screens in a big way, and he's going to be holding goals.
And he's a part of that wrestling. He's part of wrestling royalty. He's a part of that Anawahi family. I mean, you can't. Honestly, he's the realest dude. Jacob Fatu to me is like, this is the wild Samoans in the TikTok generation. The new gen wild Samoan. He has shades of Umaga to me, but even like a raw Umaga, he's the underground Umaga. I love Jacob Fatu.
Do you project him in 2024 being that guy who breaks out into the casual audience, or do you think it's just is it someone else that can find their way?
I mean, I honestly, it's hard to gauge, man, because if you would have asked me this 3 years ago, I would have said by now he would have already broke into that casual audience. But just contract situations, I guess it all depends on how he's tied up with MLW, because if he can break free of the MLW contract and get a big stage, he's going to be the next big thing. He is that guy. I think he's a heater. He is a heel. I don't see him as a baby face just because he has such a mean streak, but he's, if I'm Tony Khan, if I'm Paul Levesque, I'm getting in an absolute bidding war. If I'm Tony, I'm trying to steal one of the Anawahi family members. And if I'm Triple H, I'm pitching him as you are the heir apparent to the tribal chief. Like that's the level this guy's at.
So as far as the other listener choices here, of course, Dalton Castle was on the list. Dominic Mysterio was on the list multiple times. Tony Storm was on the list multiple times. And Chris Statlander made an appearance as well. So
Damn.
Some choices here. No other Jacob Fatus, but, they all made their choices. We're 100% consensus right here. But you can take a guess who picked Dalton Castle.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to most overrated here. And to me, man, there was one person on this list, and it was Damian Priest. And I really had no issue picking this. And it's not that I don't like Damian Priest. It's not that I don't think he has a place on this roster, because I certainly like what he's doing with Judgment Day. I think he found a really good role as that, the big guy in Judgment Day. But I think if we're looking at guys that are going to be world champion, guys that follow in the footsteps of the Money in the Bank winners that take that next step, he was a little bit exposed by being senior Money in the Bank this year. And I think by that, I mean, watching him hold that briefcase and kind of trying to wrap your head around him cashing in on either Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns, and how it felt like there was no way that it could happen successfully. And to me, I mean, the one caveat I'll say that I'll say that made me pause. I'm picking this as far as him on this spot, 'cause someone had to be here, was the Bad Bunny match in Puerto Rico, because that was a banger match that he helped, get Bad Bunny through that. And of course, he's the professional wrestler and Bad Bunny's the celebrity. I would say he did probably 85 and change of the heavy lifting in that match. So he deserves a lot of credit for the construction of that match, deservedly so. But for how he's featured on the WWE card and to the relative ceiling I see him reaching, I just think that he's not that guy. I unfortunately.
That Bad Bunny match, even a broken clock's right twice a day. So here's my thing. Like, you hit the nail on the head. Him with the briefcase. Is there anyone, is there any fan out there that thinks he has a just shot in hell of beating either of those guys and being that guy for this company? He's a mid-carder at best, kind of masquerading as a guy knocking on the door of the main event scene. I've never bought him as a main event guy. You know, Punishment Martinez in ROH. Like he's a talented guy. He does what he does. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. His running in NXT, a lot of people were fans of. I've just never bought in. I don't know who his character is. I just don't like, who are you? You know, I don't relate. I don't connect. I don't feel a believability, a reality there that I connect with. Maybe he's just not for me, but I just don't see him as the guy that he's in the position that I'm supposed to believe he's in. I don't believe that. I think he's had moments where I think they really like him. I think he does his job. He's what WWE wants him to be, but I think he's a placeholder for that briefcase. I think he's going to cash it in and it's going to fail and it's going to be wrapped up in this Judgment Day storyline. Yeah, man, I just don't buy what he's selling me. I've never been able to connect to Damian Priest.
Yeah, and I also look at championship belts and accolades through the lens of how wrestlers and others present them to be used and utilized. And usually it's the wrestler that makes whatever they're holding, Money in the Bank briefcase or championship belt. And this feels like a classic case of giving him something to make the fans believe or trick them to believe he could be that guy. And maybe there is a change you can make. Maybe it's presentation, because I think the in-ring work is solid. I think there's a lot of, obviously the size is there. He's found a niche in Judgment Day. I think he has the ability to be a believable heel. But you mentioned the character thing, because there are times where he's comedic and there's times where he's serious, and exactly. Like, what is, sometimes I ask the same question. What is Judgment Day? Like, what is the faction at a whole? Because sometimes they're doing comedy skits with R-Truth in the back, and sometimes they're trying to run roughshod over the whole roster. And I understand people have different they have different levels and dynamics to their personalities. But to me, it almost like you're feeding two masters here, and one of them is trying to make him a main eventer, and the other is trying to make him a believable heel, and both are not working. So
yeah,
he's a big bad that you definitely have a lot of raw skill in, and I think he's better than a lot of other guys I could have put in that position. But because of the fact that he's put it in the heir apparent position of cashing in and winning a championship, it kind of exposes the shortcomings, in my opinion, as a fan watching through the lens of, I don't know if he's that guy, and I don't think he will be that guy.
He's a big bad that doesn't feel bad. He's playing big scary guy, but I'm not scared of him. You know what I mean? Like, no matter how much eyeliner you put on, doesn't make you like a down and dirty rock star. I just don't. The character's not there for me. I don't know who you are. Are you a funny guy? Are you? I just don't understand. Even the Archer, when he was doing that in NXT, like, what is that? What's that mean? Who are you? I've never bought in. I've just never bought in. And I hate this topic. Somebody had to be this. And that, there's a ton of other people that I'm sure people would throw into this category, but he was the first wrestler that jumped to mind for me.
Looking at the other listener picks, a resounding multiple people said CM Punk. Another person said Daniel Garcia, and we also had Roman Reigns on the list as well, which, I'm always resident labeled CM Punk hater here, proudly blocked by CM Punk from words I've said here on this podcast. Not sure how it got to his ears, but I guess I should wear it as a badge of honor. Daniel Garcia, I couldn't disagree with more. But everyone's entitled.
I think he's underrated.
I completely agree.
Actually,
yeah. I mean, I could find the person who said it if you want me to put him on blast here.
Yeah.
I got to find it here. Overrated. So either way, I'll find it down the list as we continue to go. But let's get to Most Improved first, because Most Improved was something, again, similar to his stablemate in Judgment Day. This was a no-brainer to me.
Yep.
And Dominic Mysterio is the recipient of that 5-year extension, allegedly, with WWE, and deservedly so. This guy is the most improved by a lot. Just to give you guys some stats that were compiled in November, Dominic Mysterio, as of mid-November, had 89 matches for WWE, which was the second highest out of anyone in the company. So at this point, he's probably had, give him another 10. So say 99 matches or so. Just keep in perspective, in 2022, he had 55 matches in the entire year. So it's really even more impressively fantastic when you have to consider how much work he does comparably to everybody else, as working in the house shows and working those circuits and being on TV every single week. He wrestles his matches. He works up to 3 shows a week. He takes bumps while he's at ringside for Damian Priest and Finn Balor. He also does, everything else, autograph signings, all the media appearances. Dude, I just think he also has stepped his game up with the in-ring work as well. I mean, the match he had with Sami Zayn, the match with Dragon Lee on Raw, not to mention the matches on NXT with Nathan Frazier, Carmelo Hayes. And he's also kind of holding his own as far as perception goes. Of course, in the ring, he's jumped leaps and bounds as far as his in-ring poise. And obviously, practice makes perfect, as cliche as it is. But he's working with top-tier talent. And in a lot of ways, he's coming out looking like he is the more impressive one. And that's what I pull away. Even the matches, like that match with Carmelo Hayes, you would think watching Carmelo Hayes, man, that guy's to be the future star. He's going to be a future champion. I walked away from the match being like, Dom shined brighter. Isn't that crazy?
Dude, and you talk about his in-ring. Obviously, his in-ring has drastically improved. At one point, probably a year ago, people were calling for this guy to get buried in NXT, not because they love NXT, but because, hey, this guy needs to sharpen his tool belt. Like, people were calling for them to get rid of this kid. It's when he was doing all this stuff with his dad before he turned heel, he was getting a lot of hate. And the in-ring obviously has improved. He's working his ass off, NXT matches, everything with Judgment Day on the main roster. But to me, the thing that really elevated him for most improved was his character. He's found himself. Before, his character just felt like, this is Ray's son. Now I get who he is. Give the kid credit. We were talking about it in the non-wrestler award with Don Callis. He's arguably one of the most hated people in WWE as a heel, which is a good thing. He gets tons of boos. People love to despise him. And I just think he's found his voice. He knows who he is. He's leaning into it. And I was a hater. Like, I was like, what is this guy? He's changed the channel bad to me. And it was so shocking because he's got that Mysterio pedigree. But now I'm like, he is one of the more entertaining moments of main roster programming. Like, Dom has won people over. The WrestleMania entrance, when he came out, it's incredible. I think Dom has done a lot of work on himself, and it shows.
Yeah, and also just to kind of take a snippet of the day in the life, just kind of really show what it takes to improve at this level in the quick amount of time. In October, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, worked all the house shows. They were in Germany. He flew back to the U.S. for Raw on Monday, wrestled Ricochet, then flew to Orlando to work Halloween Havoc against Nathan Frazier.
Crazy.
So, I mean, if that doesn't set an example of just being a guy they can rely on, and not to mention him and JD McDonough, give shout out to JD McDonough. They're two of the best bumpers and sellers on the whole goddamn roster, making everyone look better. You watch either one of them at ringside for any of these matches on Raw, the way they sell, I mean, he makes everybody look like $1 million. I can't say enough great things about him. And they may be, if you look at the in-ring style, of course, he's tampered down. He doesn't do a lot of the same Ray offense. Cause when you first mentioned, like, he's Ray's son, he was pretty much doing the 619 on the West Coast pop,
right?
Light for his moveset. But we've seen him change the style. Obviously, as a heel, you want to slow it down, similar to Randy Orton, where you want to be more poised and calculated. we're seeing some of the offensive moves be added back to the repertoire. And you mentioned the character, as confident as he is in the character, as comfortably as he is playing that heel, he could still balance both of the styles and do the electric style wrestling while still having the heat and the ability to get what is probably the biggest heat on the whole roster. And I still believe they're piping some in, but I digress. But I think
Yeah.
the really just the poise he's developed over these, and it shows. I mean, just that week snippet, that's 1 week in Germany. He's probably been doing that all year.
Reps make you comfortable, and he feels comfortable in there. Dude, 5-10 years from now, who knows where this kid's going to be? He's going to continue to grow. Hats off to Dom. The only other person that was vying for this for me that I had to really kind of grapple with, but Dom kind of ran away with it for me. But got to give just a little bit of love to Toni Storm in the complete evolution of her character, and how she's taken this new timeless gimmick and really just completely changed the way we thought what type of wrestler she was. I mean, she's reinvented herself. So she was close, but Dom ran away with it.
So Toni Storm made some other listeners list. Also Roderick Strong, Swerve Strickland, also on there as well.
Roddy's a good one. I didn't even think of Roddy. That's a good one.
So yeah, and also shout out to Nick the Comic Nerd. He put Daniel Garcia's most overrated. So I would like to hear your reasonings, sir. But we appreciate you. Thank you for sending in your list. We love you, brother. All right, moving over to moment of the year here, and there were a lot of great moments throughout this year. And unanimously, you and I both sat down and said AEW All In at Wembley Stadium. I mean, if you go back, just looking at it through the lens of what it meant, because you go back to 2019, AEW changed pro wrestling, and really during the beginning years, the promotion really started to erase the doubts. They ran large scale events, but this, if you would have said to someone at that Jacksonville poolside press conference that this would have been possible only a few short years later, when they were barely getting 10,000 fans, into an arena in that first initial bet with Dave Meltzer for the original All In, that August 27th, 2023, you're going to be at All In Wembley, 81,035 fans screaming, the pomp and circumstance for a show that wasn't WWE, even with, outside of the in-ring action, because it was a great night. Headlined by MJF and Adam Cole that we were talking about for weeks and weeks. Man, like, to recognize this was outside of that WWE propaganda machine, that someone else was able to do this. This was a moment in time that we'll have forever, no matter how many people want to dispute the attendance. Like, you saw how many people were there loving pro wrestling.
Yeah, I think the attendance thing, you're splitting hairs at that point. You're talking thousands here, thousands there. They filled Wembley. Like, the moment of, there's so much tribalism and nitpicky shit going on, but the fact that a company not based in Stamford, Connecticut can go to Wembley Stadium and put on an arena show is so important to the business of pro wrestling. I'm not talking about, I'm not planting my flag in the AEW ground. I'm not defending WWE. I'm just talking pro wrestling in general. It is very, very important and hopeful for the future of pro wrestling that we can have events like this that aren't under that WWE umbrella. That is a great thing. Like, we love seeing the manias and the scale and the scope of these big stadium shows, the pomp and circumstance of it. But the fact that now we can get a show like that from another promotion, this is huge. This is game changing. This is a top 5, barring all the nitpicky stuff about the attendance and the turnstile and all of this. This is a top 5 event of all time. How could this not be moment of the year? There was a lot of other things. CM Punk being fired, Cody Rhodes' entrance at Mania. There's tons of things we could talk about, but to me, this was a no-brainer. Just for the impact in pro, not the impact for AEW, which is huge and important for AEW, But this to me was the impact it had on the business. You know, the fact that we can have a show of this level, like I said, that's not under the WWE umbrella, that's special. That's awesome. And you know, I would love to see it where wrestling gets to a point where TNA can do 70,000, where MLW can do 70,000. Probably not going to happen anytime soon, but that's what I want out of wrestling. I'm not saddling up and say WWE is the only place that can do that. No, this is a step towards showing that wrestling is so popular that a company outside of WWE can fill an arena or fill a stadium like this. I think it's vitally important. And it 100%, I didn't even think twice about this. This is hands down moment of the year.
Whether this broke WrestleMania 32's worldwide record for paid fans or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. Like, because you said everything perfectly, but also want to make note that without even a single match announced, fans bought tickets right away. In the end, it was a success for not only just AEW, but pro wrestling at large. And it was, for me, my moment of the year. Looking at some of the other moments of the year, we had Sammy and the Bloodline, the moment at Survivor Series, obviously leading into the being attacked by the Bloodline was mentioned multiple times. The Elimination Chamber match was mentioned. We also had Christian telling Edge to go fuck himself was moment of the year by somebody. And also multiple times, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn winning the championships from the Usos at WrestleMania was the biggest by a lot of people. Majority of people said the main event at WrestleMania for the tag titles was out there. So a great moment. To me, it wasn't historic like AEW All In. So,
well, yeah, that's my thing. Sneed sent in his list to me, and he had Adam Copeland's debut. Great moment. But to me, those are just moments within storylines. They're good, but this is historical for pro wrestling, not just for a storyline and a promotion. All In, vitally important. And here's the thing about All In, I feel like it gets slept on a little bit just because of all the CM Punk fallout and the firing that came right off the heels of this event. Throw that out the window, man. This was important. A stadium show not done by WWE. That's big.
Absolutely. And speaking of storyline, we have our storyline of the year here. And man, this was challenging because there's been a lot of great storylines to talk about. And we have Orange Cassidy's title reign. And the biggest thing to talk about with this Orange Cassidy's title reign was making him the most successful champion in the history of All Elite Wrestling and having the ability to take this championship. I mean, he started as champion October 2022. And to me, this is not only the highlight of 2023, but it might be one of the highlights of all of AEW, their legacy and their history. I mean, if you look at just his historic reign and how many times he defended and the story they were telling inside these matches against the likes of Rey Fenix, Jay Lethal, Bandito, Swerve, Jeff Jarrett, Wheeler Yuta was in there, Daniel Garcia, Shibata. And it all kind of culminated with this main event match for what was perceived as a mid-card championship at AEW All Out. And Orange Cassidy, Jon Moxley, September 3rd in Chicago, and they stole the show. So, like, this to me was the storyline of the year, watching him through a war of attrition be able to get through and hold on to that championship barely. And I know people probably, you mentioned kind of the verbiage sleeping on something, maybe because of the way Jon Moxley originally dropped the title after becoming champion makes people forget, because then Orange now still has the championship and it feels like, oh, it never ended. But the culmination, the conclusion to this story was him losing to Moxley and them coming face to face, earning mutual respect. This was story of the year by a lot.
People forget how compelling this was when it was in the moment. I know, you know, Moxley had the injury thing that caused him to drop it, but there, you know, you're going to get people screaming, oh, bloodline story, even the devil storyline. Like, there's a lot of stories out there, but this is one of those moments where it's really, truly, this was a belt that was kind of getting to a point where people are like, is it important? Is it, you know, all Atlantic? They switch it to the international. This is the story of a man making the title. The title didn't make the man. This Orange Cassidy threw this title on his back and made it so vitally important. I was just, it was matches, man. It wasn't even like this big intricate story, but you were so compelled. The fact that he was taking damage and going in injured and going in beat down every week, defending, sometimes twice a week. Sometimes he's on 2 shows defending this. It was one of the best storylines in AEW. I think it was one of the best storylines in pro wrestling. Obviously, we gave it storyline of the year. It's highly slept on. I think it elevated Orange beyond just kind of a comedy gimmick. Like, this is truly the point where you're like, damn, this guy can go. I love this. I think it's an underrated storyline that many people forget about, but I don't forget about it. The dude had a hell of a run. Storyline of the year was the international title run by Orange Cassidy.
So majority of fans and listeners came in and brought in the Bloodline multiple times, but we also had mentions of Better Than You, Baby, and also one mention of Christian Cage and the Patriarchy. So I don't know if Christian Cage and the Patriarchy gets that level yet. I do love the story. I think really you can make the argument. For me, the reason I didn't make it the Bloodline, I think the Bloodline story should be story of the year in a lot of ways, but they put it on ice for majority of the year. It was, when it was hot, it was really hot, but when it was cold, it disappeared from TV. And from start to finish with Orange, it was off to the races, and they took a championship. He took hammer and nail, and he constructed a championship made important. And the legacy of Orange and that championship are going to be coincided for the rest of time. And I like what they did there.
Yeah, and the Bloodline, if we stopped voting at WrestleMania, I would say yes, it was the Bloodline. But I feel like they jumped the shark with Jimmy and Jay and how they handled all of that. I feel like it really petered out. And with Better Than You, Baby, right now it's killing it, but it's unfinished. We don't know where it's going. Not to say what we got wasn't great, but that just kicked off really right before All In. So I just feel like we have the entire story of right. Orange Cassidy's run, where we have the beginning, middle, and end, and I thought it was well done.
And the book is still open on Bloodline right now. I feel like the story isn't told in completion. So if you want to make the argument that the Sami Zayn portion of the Bloodline stuff was story of the year, okay, I can buy that. But as far as Bloodline from pillar to post, story's not over yet. So
yeah, right.
Looking at feud of the year here, and this, we were in danger of recency bias, of course, but looking at it through all the feuds that happened and really digesting all the matches and everything that went down, it's Swerve and Hangman. And I really think if you can pinpoint a moment in time where there's a star-making moment, you can look at your favorite wrestlers and find the time where they took the next step. This is the feud for Hangman and Swerve Strickland in a different way. Like, they went 2 different paths. For Hangman, he was already established, but I felt like he took him back to relevancy in the best way possible. Swerve Strickland cemented his super villain status. I mean, he had a goddamn home invasion where he was threatening Hangman's toddler.
Yeah.
And this escalated the feud to the point where it justified drinking blood. So, and how many times can you ever construct that sentence and put those words together? But this was a feud that justified what we got as the culmination. And I think both guys walked out 25 times better than when they started there.
Well, yeah, and I think there's a lot of feuds that were great. People were probably going to go to Roman Cody. That was a huge feud. But my only thing with feuds like that, both of those guys are in good spots. Roman's uber popular, Cody's uber popular. The thing that elevated this is feud. One, it ended in, I don't think it's totally over, but in the course of 2023, it ended in arguably what could be a match of the year candidate. But the thing that makes this the best feud for me is you revitalized a talent who had fallen out of grace, and you strapped the Rocket onto an up-and-comer into the main event scene. Both of these guys were elevated so much. Hangman had the stink of the Punk situation. He had kind of been on the back burner for a while. Former champion kind of went into obscurity for a minute. And Swerve is clawing and knocking at the door of being a main event guy. And I feel like both of those guys just gained so much from this. So it was the only one that really jumped out to me as like, yeah, this both talents really gained a lot from it.
Yeah, and it depends on what you're using to check the boxes. For me, as you said before, it's about bringing guys to the next level, and that's what feud should do. If you look at the Bret and Austin feud, what that did for Austin's
100%.
career, this was the equivalent for Swerve's. This was his Bret Austin feud, and his feud with Hangman will be remembered as that pivotal moment to get him to the next level, and hopefully they can get they can capitalize.
Yeah, 100%, man. They were just crushing it. This was I think you said it. This was Swerve's star-making performance. This is where everyone kind of looked at him and were like, holy shit, we got a guy who can be in the mix of the top main event scene. Like, oh, he can do this. You know, this is the Hit Row guy. And he was great in Hit Row. But Swerve in Hit Row, we weren't thinking, oh, Swerve can be in a ring with Seth Rollins. Swerve can be in a ring with Roman. Now, I feel like if you dropped this Swerve into the WWE universe, I could totally buy Swerve staring off Seth Rollins. That's how much this elevated him.
Yeah, I mean, that moment in time is going to be remembered forever. And the biggest thing for Swerve that he pulled out of here is the momentum that's continuing to this day. Yep. And this feud, like, that's the function of a feud for me.
Yep. Incredible.
So looking at the other feuds of the year, I'm going to go through some of the other listener choices for sure. AEW fans versus WWE fans was on the list. Kenny versus Don Callis, Cody versus Brock, Cody versus Roman was on the list as well. Multiple times. Cody versus Brock was listed multiple times, which to me, you and I were very critical of the feud because I don't know, just wasn't for me. I mean, the matches themselves were really good, and maybe they believe that it helped Cody remain his main event status, but feud of the year, like, what did it really entail?
And what did it do? What did Cody gain from that? It made him kind of still relevant, but it didn't, I didn't buy it. He felt just as big as he was before as he did coming out of that feud. I feel like he didn't grow from that. A feud, to me, you said it best. A feud elevates both guys. I don't think there's another feud that the guys gained as much as these two.
So going with our next category here, it's the babyface, and we mentioned him by name before, so and like Beetlejuice, he will appear. Cody Rhodes is our babyface of the year, and I mean, look at his year. He was, if you want to look at an MVP for WWE, it was either Dom Mysterio or Cody Rhodes. I mean, he was featured in almost every PLE for them. He played a role in pretty much all the big matches they've had during regular episodes on Raw. He's always there. And also, if you look at what he did as far as being an ambassador for the brand, he is such a great advocate for what WWE is trying to do and the message. And if you compare him really to who's been a absent champion in Roman Reigns, you know, it's night and day. Who should be the guy who you should strap the rocket to? And I hope they make the right decision come WrestleMania. He is the babyface of the year, in my opinion. And there's no, because for me, there's no, is he going to turn? Is he not going to turn? He's always just a true blue good guy. And that was such a disparate decision to make compared to what it was in AEW, where everyone wanted to turn heel. I love the true blue, old school 1980s babyface we're getting from Cody Rhodes. Love it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of like our write-in votes. I know Sneed wrote in MJF. MJF's been a great babyface, but he's not the babyface I'm looking for when it comes to this award. Cody checks all the boxes. He, like you said, he's a white meat babyface. He's promoting the company. I mean, you see him taking the pictures with the fans. Babyface comes with more than just what you are in the ring. And he's in John Cena mode, man. He's that guy for that company. He's kind of the face of the good guy for WWE. I think he's a consummate company guy. He's playing the game. And I don't think, man, that WrestleMania moment where he comes out and -1 is there and his mom is there and his sister's in the front row, like, everyone there is wanting him to beat Roman, and when he loses that match, the devastation, that's a great baby face. He made you care. He's the bright shining hope. I'm a big fan of Cody Rhodes. I love what he does. And I think he went over to WWE and he's became their guy, their knight in shining armor. And I think he embodies what a babyface is.
And I don't think they should ever turn him heel. I think he's the perfect, like, he's what John Cena, what they wanted John Cena to be from the jump. And I think the fans weren't ready for it, but I think the audience now accepts Cody for who he is.
Yep.
You don't hear any hints of, please turn him heel. We don't want that. At least I don't hear it in those circles. Everyone just accepts him for who he is. And as corny as the presentation might be to some people, it just works for Cody.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the kids and the weight belts and all the stuff that goes into it. But it's really the frequency for me. Like, he's always on Raw. He's either cutting a promo or wrestling, usually against the Judgment Day. 2023 was filled with that. But you mentioned the other baby faces. MJF was littered on this list. The other oddball answer was Julia Hart, which, put it out there. I mean, baby face of the year. I mean, it'd be kind of challenging for
that's
me to say
a stretch.
That, she, I don't even know if she's legitimately a baby face. So
I don't think she's a legit baby face either.
She does have a face that resembles a youthful person, but I'm not sure.
I think that's probably where they were going with it.
Someone put very literal. So
yeah.
Going with our best heel of the year. And this was a crowded category, of course, but looking at our heels of the year, and I look at it as eliciting a reaction, and who elicits a better reaction than Christian Cage? I mean, he continues to sink to a new low on every single show he's on. I mean, if you remember, he had his 10-year-old daughter kicked out of the arena on Collision. I mean, he was always taking shots at Nick Wayne's family. I mean, talking about Darby's uncle who had passed away in a car accident. There's no low that Christian Cage won't sink to. And then add on top of this with his best friend, his childhood best friend, Adam Copeland, coming into the company, and has brought a different side of Christian out. He's the benchmark. I mean, now that MJF has transcended into this babyface era, and even then, Christian Cage was almost neck and neck with what MJF was bringing to the table as far as the mic goes, because unanimously this guy is booed, and the lows he continues to take, he's going to go lower. And this patriarchy story that continues, we're going to see some great heat come out of Christian, and he blurs that line. Like, you can't imagine he's that bad of a person in real life ever. Like, he's probably the nicest person on earth, but he does such a good job of playing that despicable fucking heel on screen.
Have we seen him smile in the last year? You know what I mean?
He has frown lines from this year.
He's doing the best work of his career. I truly stack this up against anything, because you're going to get people, no, the Edge and Christian TLC matches. That's fine, but he wasn't showing this level of character. I mean, the dude has a real problem with dead dads. You know what I mean? Like, he's going after the deceased fathers, and I'm a fan of a heel that says things that no one should say. He's pushing buttons. He's so despicably awful. I think I don't think there's a close second. I don't think anyone cheers him. I don't think anyone likes him. Dom gets booed, but he gets booed because people really like Rhea Ripley, and he's kind of the shitbag young guy. Christian gets booed because he's just a despicable bastard. There's no good qualities. The fact that the dude rocked a turtleneck with cut off sleeves in a match gets style points for me. I mean, and it all starts, he turns on Jungle Boy, and then the whole patriarchy that has been born out of all of that, taking in Nick Wayne, Adam Copeland coming in, him giving the nut shot to Copeland. I don't know, man. I don't no one else popped in my mind. You know, Roman Reigns, he's a heel, but people cheer Roman.
Right.
People like Roman, the dominance of Roman. Christian is the old school heel that we love to hate, and I think he's doing brilliant work.
Christian was unanimous choice by all listeners here, so that was the only category that had unanimous, and Christian Cage well deserved the heel of the year. There's no debate on it. And you mentioned this renaissance of his career. He had the ability to reinvent himself, because if you remember when he came over, it felt like he was going to do his TNA shtick over again, and he's just completely different. And similar to Samoa Joe, we're looking at this reinvention in the best way possible to enhance the roster and everyone around him. So kudos to Christian. I hope he continues to do it for many years to come.
Yeah, I think he's turned a lot of people too, because when he first came over, if you remember when he debuted in AEW, there was a lot of people that were like, "Oh, really? That's the surprise, Christian." He got and now just the level of work he's put in this character has turned people around, and Sneed sent his in. He had Christian too, so it's completely unanimous. Best heel, Christian.
So going over to the women's wrestling MVP, you could make a lot of arguments for other women, but it's Athena in my book.
Ace. I feel like this is the one topic where this is the one award where people are going to be like, no way, we're going to get heat for this one, but I stand by this one.
Yeah, no, I'll explain why, because I know everyone's going to say Rhea Ripley as the women's MVP of the year. Because arguably you can't find a woman that's had a greater 2023 than ROH Women's World Champion Athena. She's held that championship for over a year, going back to Final Battle 2022. She defeated Mercedes Martinez, and then she's thwarted every challenger that's gotten her way. Sky Blue, Kiera Hogan, Mercedes Martinez came back trying to get her championship. Willow Nightingale got defeated twice. And then she also main evented the first ever ROH Pay-Per-View as a woman, Death Before Dishonor 2023. She's been
in a crazy good match.
But she's also just been dominating the roster, and she's also building her name and her legacy, and she's been scarcely seen in AEW. I mean, a handful of appearances. If you go to the 0 Hour for the Women's Owen Hart Cup, she was in there. She did lose to Nightingale during that tournament, which is whatever. It's separate of what this ROH run. I imagine she's going to be featured heavily in AEW very soon, which is why I was shocked that Billy Starks didn't take that title off of her. Man, she's the bright spot of ROH, keeping it afloat. She is the workhorse. I think as far as wrestling MVP goes, there's no other choice. And if you want to go Rhea Ripley, yeah, on screen, but she's not even for women's wrestling right now. I mean,
but what's her feud? What's her feud?
Right, exactly. How many matches has she had outside of that main event match at WrestleMania that blows you away?
Yeah, like where? Tell me the memorable feuds. Like, tell me the memorable matches that mattered. Even in AEW, like who comes close? Like no one. And if anyone's like pushing back, obviously Rhea is the knee-jerk reaction to the casual fan because she's all over social media. People love her. Character's awesome. But when you're talking about carrying a company, you're buried away on a streaming platform. And let's be honest, that show on Honor Club, it's her, man, carrying that company. It's no one else. You know, the world title and the TV title was on AEW TV. When it came to tuning into Ring of Honor on that app, she was the must-see thing. She had a storyline with Billy Starks that ran a year. Billy Starks is her minion. She had countless matches that are top-tier matches. And this is coming from someone, I was not a fan of Ember Moon. I was not a big fan. But Athena, dude, she's hit this next level. And if you're scoffing at this, it's because you're not watching.
Right.
You know, and just because someone's on a platform that doesn't have as many eyes as Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, Collision, doesn't mean that they're not valuable. And I don't think there's no one as valuable in the women's division to their product as Athena. Without Athena on Ring of Honor, it's dark times in that division. Like, she has carried that company on her back. She main evented Death Before Dishonor, and she main evented Final Battle. Like, she is the main event scene in that company.
Yeah, and I'm also, I mean, to go back with the Rhea Ripley thing, I'm looking at his work rate. I'm like looking at the MVP caliber because if you want to,
Yep.
this argument always happens in sports when and someone wins an MVP and you compare, are the MVP the best player or are they the most crucial player to their roster? And I think she's like both because the work rate she puts on consistently great matches. And as I mentioned,
Yep.
Rhea Ripley, not a lot of crucial feuds. That main, let's just say the match she had at WrestleMania was better than any match she had that Athena had all year. But the cumulative effect of the full scope of the matches that Athena had were better than all of the matches that Rhea was squashing other women's wrestlers throughout the year. Because if you think about most of her matches, they've been one-sided.
Yeah.
Athena has competitive matches every single week on ROH TV and on big stages main eventing. So I understand the case for Rhea. I get it, but I also am looking at it through the lens of the MVP of women's wrestling right now. And to me, Athena deserves her credit.
I'm talking week in, week out. You know, like week in, week out, Athena's been more valuable to that company than Rhea has been. And it shows because Rhea doesn't have to have matches every week on Raw. You know, she doesn't need to because she has that star power. But I'm telling you, man, Athena, you're sleeping on Athena. She's killing it. And there's an argument to be made that Death Before Dishonor main event, that's right there. I mean, it's maybe not as good as Rhea's main event at Mania or her not main event, but her big match at Mania. Maybe it's not but it's right there. It's nipping at the heels. It's not like there's this landslide victory of that's the greatest women's match of the year. I think Athena's been putting on bangers.
Speaking of bangers, man, we have match of the year here, and there was a lot on the table here, but we ultimately decided as a consensus with the Iron Man match, Bryan Danielson, Maxwell Jacob Friedman at AEW Revolution. And reason being is just the poetic nature that this match constructed a story where you're already starting from a deficit with an Iron Man match because of the length of time to stretch out the drama and find a way to keep people invested from minute 1 to minute 60. You know, with Danielson having the chance to bleed in ways that he could not have even dreamed of in WWE was, to me, a big storytelling mechanism that he loves to tap into, playing that role of really the type of wrestler he wanted to showcase on a main stage that he was showing so frequently in ROH. And then MJF, I mean, people talking about him as a babyface now, but playing his role as a villain in this whole match was the perfect dynamic. And the finishes, too, if you remember them, were very creative. We had Danielson hitting the knee kick to win the first fall. MJF got disqualified with a low blow then made successful consecutive pinfalls. Very strategic. A lot of those strategies don't get used in matches like this in a war of attrition. And then when they went down to, the end of the match they were tied at 3 falls, we had MJF hitting that ridiculous tombstone pile driver off the second rope, and he came up just short in the pinfall. Danielson had the submission locked in. MJF did not tap, which of course we got the overtime, which everyone's going to compare to the Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels overtime. And I'll still stand by, and I know that you were dying on this hill.
Yep.
The overtime, the whole Iron Man match at large was better than that original one at WrestleMania 12.
It's not even close in my mind. It really isn't.
The finish with the combination of you have the rule breaking with the heel, and then really MJF showcasing an absolute prophetic nature of athletic ability to show that side of, because people get so used to seeing that side of MJF now. But this was the first time on a large scale that he had showed that ability to wrestle. We all knew it was there. This match made sense. It took MJF to a next level. And I mean, it met both masters. Danielson had that showcase. This might be one of Danielson's best match in the history of his career.
You took the words right out of my mouth. This was the moment where it shut all the haters up that all this guy is a mic guy. And if this match didn't shut you up, you're a hater. Plain and simple. This match was designed not only in the bell to bell, but it was designed in story to legitimize him as a in-ring talent. I mean, this was incredible. At the time, people were calling me recency bias. I had recency bias saying this was better than Bret Hart's Iron Man match. almost a year later, and I'm still saying it's better. This was the best Iron Man match I've ever seen. It was incredible. It's easy to say, it would be easy to put an Osprey match in here because he had so many, but like me and you talked about, Ace, it's like there were so many good Osprey matches that they all kind of blend together. I mean, the speedball match, the 2 matches against Kenny, tons of New Japan matches, incredible. But this match, an hour, I mean, an hour-long match that went over. I think it was like an hour and 5 minutes after the run over. So, yeah, this was the one for me. It still rings in my mind. I rewatched it. I love this match.
So, match of the year, we had MJF and Danielson being mentioned, Swerve and Hangman, Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay, both of those matches. Also had a mention of Will Ospreay versus Naito. So those matches were out there. And we also had a mention of the tag team championship match, the Usos versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, which is getting a lot of love, man. As far as moment of the year, it was an awesome match. And I think it was a great moment for tag team wrestling, whether, where they went from it or not, doesn't, if you look at it in the moment, the vacuum
right.
of WrestleMania 39, that moment was big, but this match, nothing really topped it for me. And it's weird because we were talking week after week, Will Ospreay. The collection of the matches almost took away because it was hard to even figure out which was his best match, which speaks volumes of his catalog. This was clearly MJF's best match of the year, and it took him to the next level. I mean, we'll definitely talk about who our wrestler of the year is, but this is a big piece of putting that gem into the catalog of what you want to be perceived as. And then, to me, MJF, this is a history-making moment for him.
Star-making, for sure.
So moving into Booker of the Year, this was a conversation that goes on, and I know that we're looking at the lens of course, everyone wants to say, is it Tony Khan? Is it Paul Levesque? Is it Tony Khan? Is it Paul Levesque? We're here at the Turnbuckle Tavern, the Tournies, Wrestling Time. We're going to tell you it's Scott D'Amore. And I could sit here and tell you why. And, as far as the sequential storytelling of Impact Wrestling throughout the year 2023, but it's also, he's getting credit for what's to come. And I think a lot of what's to come is very, very exciting, putting the buzz on this promotion in the best way possible, tying in nostalgia with also what's going on in the current day locker room, building one of the best rosters, if not the best roster in wrestling today. It is honestly light years above what they were doing in the past. And under the steady hand of Scott D'Amore, the company is in the best shape it's ever been. And I'm confident that we're going to see probably the best year of TNA wrestling in 2024 ever. And this catalog year of 2023, what a blessing it was to cover this in full Embrace for Impact. It was just absolutely fantastic. Scott D'Amore continues to tell great stories with legacy guys. I mean, even with the world title pivoting after Josh Alexander got hurt, Alex Shelley had the ability to take that championship after Steve Macklin took it and ran with it for a bit. Goddamn, Scott D'Amore, here are your flowers, brother. You very much well deserve them.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet on mine. It's simple, man. He's trustworthy in his booking. It's right down the middle. It makes sense. He doesn't have the blowback. He doesn't have the lows, or he doesn't have the lows that a Tony Khan. And maybe that's, a sign of the level that TNA is perceived to be. But to me, everything is so like on brand for them. He delivers. He gives you surprises. He's booking. He has his hand in my opinion, the best booked women's division in wrestling. And it wasn't even a question. I mean, Tony's made mistakes. Triple H has made mistakes. The bloodline thing, the way the bloodline is kind of fizzled out. There's glaring weaknesses in Tony Khan and Triple H to me. So if you're picking either of those ones, I feel like it's tribalism. If you're looking at every week, week to week, always delivering something good, it's Scott D'Amore by a landslide.
Yeah, I mean, also people want to mention Shawn Michaels, who popped up in the listeners, Tony Khan and Paul Levesque, both for sure. NXT were getting their flowers, but it's recency. It's been the tail end of 2023 for NXT. Hasn't been an all-year thing Impact from pillar to post, January to December. Right now that we're looking at it, it was the best. And Scott D'Amore, the future is going to be really bright. But the president of Impact Wrestling during 2023, I know people are like, oh, TNA is returning. No, it's been here, man. It's been here. It's just changing the name.
Hell of a leader, man. And he gives you a little bit of everything. I love what Scott D'Amore is doing.
So moving over to promotion of the year, and of course, there's probably 2 choices, right? Or 3. Surprisingly, here in the Turnbuckle Tavern, or as we're affectionately known as the Trollbuckle Tavern, WWE gets the nod. And we can go cover pretty much from year to end. I mean, highlighted by Cody and Rhea winning the Rumble. Got Sami Zayn and the Bloodline. We got Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair tearing it up. Of course, Roman and Cody, as we mentioned before. We got Seth Rollins winning his consolation championship and making it mean something. Gunther, record-setting IC championship. The Money in the Bank winners. LA Knight's rise. Logan Paul's winning the U.S. title. And then, of course, Carlito making his return at Backlash. Randy Orton coming back at Survivor Series. Oh, yeah, CM Punk back at Survivor Series. What a goddamn year for WWE. And then tie in all the stuff behind the scenes. TKO. I mean, they're at next level right now. Superpower getting bigger. It's like Superman combining with Batman at this point. And, you know, the rich get richer, and we're lucky to see it. As much as we get hated on for not liking WWE, they were the best promotion by and large this year.
Yeah, I mean, overall, just from a business perspective, from an in-ring, from a stories perspective, what Triple H has done, promotion of the year, the success they've had, the coming out of the dark days of pre-AEW, coming out of the dark days of AEW's honeymoon period when everyone was on AEW's dick. They've really rose to the occasion and delivered up the ante for AEW, which I love. They're bringing out great quality product for the WWE fans, and it's making AEW stay honest and bring their best. And I had to get, we always get buried for being anti-WWE, and that's not the case. I feel like we're very fair in what we do. And to be fair, I think if you're looking from just a successful 2023, WWE is definitely the promotion of the year.
So going with the best stick man or best promos, MJF getting his flowers here. Best promo, man. The guy, I mean, it was him and Christian Cage in a tight race for me.
Yep.
Highlighted, I'm going to be honest with this, September 13th promo, the Steiner Math promo, put it over the top for me. MJF every time brings the heat. So poised on the microphone. Who better than MJF on the mic right now?
Dude, it's everything. Like, I don't know when this guy's going to lose this category. I don't think there's anyone close. He doesn't flub a word. He doesn't do anything wrong. He just had a killer promo against Swerve Strickland a couple weeks ago. Every time he talks, he brings something new, fresh. He has a different take. I think this is kind of like, it's expected. I wanted to go Christian, but I'm running down his feud with Danielson, his stuff with Adam Cole. He's
had his moments. He's had his flubs. Let's be honest, Christian, but he also rolls with it. So you don't even know what's intentional or not. But MJF is always, man, hit play and the guy goes.
Yep. By a landslide, stick man.
Not unanimous as far as listener goes. Christian got a significant amount of votes. MJF, of course, was littered on there, but there was pretty much equal split. So going with our tag team of the year here, we have FTR getting the nod here, and looking at their year, it took a lot for me to realize what they did this year, because a lot of it got embroiled in the Punk drama, of course. And if you look at how they started their year, Wrestle Kingdom, they were wrestling Hiroki Goto, Yoshihashi, defending their IWGP Tag Team Championships, kind of having that title collector reign come to an end to start the year. And then they went on a run in AEW. They won those tag belts at the UBS Arena in Dynamite as live in person against the Guns. A great match. Their career was on the line. And then not to mention starting that Collision, they were a huge piece to start in that Saturday show, teaming with CM Punk to defeat the Bullet Club in the main event match of the first ever Collision. And then we had maybe the best tag match of 2023, or maybe the best tag match we've ever seen in AEW in the 2 out of 3 Falls match in July on Collision against the Bullet Club for the tag titles. 2 out of 3 Falls went almost an hour.
Yeah, that match was incredible, dude.
We had the all-in match with the Bucks for the tag titles, and a great match in front of a very great UK crowd at All in London. They had that great match with Aussie Open at Wrestle Dream, which could have been match of the year. And then, they had a great match at AW Collision against the Workhorsemen. So they continued to tear it up. They had the 4-way ladder match where they they were going for the championship against Big Bill and Ricky Starks, and Cash Wheeler still kind of nursing injuries from that match, and that ladder match went 20 minutes and change. And then to end the year, ROH Final Battle 2023 in the Jay Briscoe tribute match. What a year for FTR. They were champs from April 5th to October 7th, but it's not even about the championships. It's about the work rate and continue to be the best tag team and the standard for tag team wrestling.
That's what I'm right there with you. When we were talking about this division, I'm looking at all the other tag teams and seeing what they did, because I'm like, okay, FTR had an incredible 2022. They had the AAA titles, the ROH titles, the IWGP titles. They had the feud with the Briscoes. Obviously, they were the team of 2022. But no other tag team had what they had in 2023 either. These guys were the team of 2022. They were the team of 2023. And who knows, they might be the team of 2024. FTR is in that sweet spot right now. They are humming. And I don't think there's a team out there that comes close to what they do.
So as far as listener choices, Better Than You Bebe were the top choice. Sammy and KO were also on there as well. And FTR also up there as well. But Better Than You Bebe got a lot of love, even though they weren't a tag team for that long throughout the year. So going with Wrestler of the Year, our final category, and it's Will Ospreay. Looking back at this year, no one has equaled his success in the ring. Not one person. He had one spectacular match after another. He had the match in G1 Climax with Naito, the Bound for Glory match against Speedball Mike Bailey, the two classics we keep referencing here, Kenny Omega at Wrestle Kingdom and Forbidden Door. But that only really scratches the surface of the year. He had the matches with Marufuji. He had the match with Zack Sabre Jr., Shota Umino, Shingo Takagi, Chris Jericho, and all the other matches he had in Rev Pro that probably weren't seen on TV that he just continued to bang out. The guy gives up his body to all of pro wrestling. And not to mention, man, signing a dream contract with AEW and continues that run. Got to be in the UK at Wembley. What else can you say about this guy? Will Ospreay is the Wrestler of the Year. At the risk of going over 2 hours, I think he deserves the time to talk about it. I mean, he has this it factor that is deserving to be on a big stage. And I'm so thankful that he's getting that here with the AEW deal going into 2024.
I'm so excited about 2024 in AEW with him, because we haven't seen what he can give on weekly TV, week in, week out. I think the biggest thing, obviously his matches are incredible. You ran down all of them. He crushed it. Every time he's out, he crushes it. But the thing is, he really found himself in 2023, the attitude, the everything about him, man. Like, he found his character, like that super heel version of himself. His promos, his press conferences in New Japan, I buy everything about him. It was not even a question. There was no one close. No one's done what he's done. You can go to WWE. You can go to AEW. You can look at all the top wrestlers and what they've done, and no one even comes close. When he goes to TNA, he puts on a 5-star. When he goes to AEW, he puts on a 5-star. When he goes to Rev Pro, 5-star. New Japan, 5-star. Guy is a machine. He is the best in the world, and you could argue he's been the best in the world for several years. But I think he's the man, and there's not even a close second in 2023.
So, I mean, we're going to get to definitely see what Will Ospreay is made of on a main stage, and we're going to see him on a weekly basis, which is so goddamn exciting. I can't wait to see what Will Ospreay brings to the table in AEW and having all the flowers being thrown on his feet, because it's so well-deserved.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that takes a wrap on our tourneys right here as we approach a minute left. I think we can get the rest of our stuff in.
Oh, yeah, dude. Guys, second year of Wrestling Tonight. Go check out our Patreon. Please sign up. We love you guys. We're going to be bringing you more stuff every Monday on Wrestling Tonight. Join the ride. Hell of a year, man. Wrapping up 2023. Have a happy new year, everybody. We love bringing you news. We can't wait for wrestling in 2024. It's going to be a hell of a year. Until next Monday, when we wine and dine with you kings and queens, stay out of the alley and away from the pork and beans. God luck and good speed.
Reach for the sky, boy.